Okay, we're doing a little bit of review for the test tomorrow, the last few problems. This is a quadratic and it says solve for x. Why is it a quadratic? Because it's got a square root in it. I could start by moving this over to the other side, but when I do that I get a negative in front. And I can still do it, it works. I can use x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, or I can try to factor this thing, but it's got the negative. I would have personally moved this stuff this way, and I'd have positive 3x squared minus 5x minus 8 equals 0. And again, you could argue that, well, that's got two negatives in it. So yeah, but the lead one isn't negative, which kind of makes life a little bit simpler. All right, so either way, from there, you can either factor it or you can quadratic formula it. Has anybody already figured out the factors for it? Let's save us some time. Yes, sir? I know it's 3x and x, right? Plus 1 and minus 8. And you just do it by guess and check? Minus 8 and plus 1. Okay, now I can double check it. So I'm going to do outside and inside and make sure that equals this. The outside's 3x, the inside's negative 8x. Put them together, I get negative 5x. You did it. Good job. So now that's factored, but it's not done. From there, would you write what the two answers are and billboard them to me on your iPad so I can check and see if you're doing it right. I'll pause for a second while you finish. Okay, almost everybody almost everybody I checked had it. 3x minus 8 equals 0 means 3x equals 8, which means x equals 8/3. That's one of your answers. On the other side, x plus 1 equals 0. I probably wouldn't go to all that work. I'd just jump to x equals negative 1. So there's two answers, that and that. All right, could you have gotten that with a quadratic formula? Yeah. But if you can factor it, it is easier. So that'd be my first question on each of these solving questions. It's can I factor it or not? Go ahead and move this either way you want. And then see if it will factor. And I wouldn't spend like 20 minutes trying to factor it. If I can't figure out the factors pretty quick, just do the quadratic formula. I'll pause for a second while you do that. Okay, here's how you should have started. You should have said, let's see. I don't like having the negative on the front there, so I personally would have moved that over this way. And I would have said 2x squared plus 4x, and then that negative 3 comes over and becomes positive 3. And that's kind of nice because everything's positive now. Then you could have factored it. Did anybody figure out the factors? Or does this one not factor? Oh, it doesn't factor. Okay. So then before you wasted too much time, I hope you jumped into the big formula. X equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 16, which is 4 squared, minus 4, and then I'm going to put a and c in parentheses because that's where all the mistakes are made. That's what you should do too. All over 2a, which is 2 times 2. And this a is 2 and c is 3. So it ends up being 4 times 2 is 8 times 3 is 24. And wait a minute, there's a negative underneath the square root. What does that mean? It's unreal is true, but not what we usually say. Imaginary. It's imaginary answers. So there is no real solutions would be a safe thing to say. Okay, because there's a negative underneath the square root. As soon as you see that, it's game over. You don't have to like try to simplify it from there. Okay, you can just say that there's no real answers. Okay? All right. Next one. This one's kind of scary just because it's so simple looking, but it's missing a term. Yes, you have a question or a comment?
If the negative was there and it's subtracted to like, if it was less than 16, it's subtracted to like positive 4.
Okay, if this had come out to positive 4, you're saying, then what would you do? Is that what you're asking?
Well, no, I'm just saying if it was like negative.
There'd have had to be two negatives in here. If there'd have been another negative like right there, then it would have added them. It would have made this negative times this negative would have made this whole thing a big add problem. That would have been one way it could have come out positive. Or if this number had been really small, like if this had been a 1 or a 1 maybe. Do you want to know what would happen then, or? Covered it? All right, I'm sorry. I just was not processing what you were asking. So, all right, I'm going to move on. This guy, I'm going to move it to this. And it still looks a little weird, but what's really weird about it is it doesn't have a what? An A, B, or a C? Which doesn't it have? That means C is really what? 0. So you could just go through the quadratic formula, and when you get to C, you're going to put in a 0. That's a fairly easy way to do it. Option B is, you notice it does factor. But not 2 sets of parentheses, just 1. X comes out, and what do you have left? X minus 6. See how that factors, even though it's like, it's different because it doesn't have 2 sets of parentheses, just 1. It's still factored, so there's 2 answers, x equals 0 and x equals 6. There we go. Always easiest if you can factor it. All right. I think that's enough practice. From here, just how would you start? Add 7 to both sides. That way it's equal to 0. Okay, how about this guy? Subtract 24, and that way it's equal to 0. And from there, you either factor it or you quadratic formulaize it. All right, that's enough of that. Now this next part, you're going to have that little formative on Schoology. It's not on the big main course that has the anchor. It's on my course that's got my picture on it. Go in there, and let me show you what to look for. And that's all the review problems I'm doing for today on the video.